So, if you're wondering out there what you can focus on with our early learners, there are five pillars of reading instruction, including phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Hi, I'm Crystal Luce, professor of education.
And I'm Amy Ketchum, pediatric occupational therapist.
Welcome to Plant the Seed of Learning, the podcast where we merge education and medical models to bring you science-based, practical insights on all things early childhood.
Whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or policymaker, we're here to help you support children from the start.
And today we are excited to bring to you some research-backed information pertaining to literacy.
So let's start with a daily dose of data
Okay.
because there is some data that came out this week that is perfectly relevant to what we're talking about today. This is a segment we sometimes do where we pull some information, some current research that has come out. And this past week, in Columbus City schools, during the 2024-2025 school year, they found that over 63% of children entered kindergarten already behind in literacy.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a result of this, some pediatricians are now screening children for literacy skills as young as 3 years old during routine doctor visits to
Hmm.
catch these early delays. And I think that is so smart. And that, I mean, this like really embodies what you and I are trying to do here as I bring the medical model and you bring the education model. I love when I see
Yeah.
these two systems come together to support children. It's like
Yeah.
reach out and read. It's like that program where pediatricians provide books at every well visit, and that's so
Mhm.
important, right?
It is fantastic. And I was just working with my grad students, and in class, we were discussing some recent research which stresses how students are arriving in preschool and kindergarten with a lack of book handling skills because they're so used to iPads.
Yes. So they're
It's not
swiping,
good.
right? They're taking a book
Yeah.
and they're swiping the cover, not
Yeah.
understanding that you have to physically
It
turn a
is not
page.
good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it you do get ingrained if you're used to using your phone or an iPad to read or do things. I
Yeah.
find myself sometimes looking at a book wishing I could expand the text. It's not a good thing.
I've done that too. Have you ever looked at a magazine and the picture's a little too small, so you
Yeah,
you go to
yeah,
expand? Yeah.
yeah.
It-
So I'm so happy that today we are discussing early literacy. Over the
yeah.
last several years, the term structured literacy has become increasingly mainstream. We hear it a lot when we're in schools. Professional development surrounded structured literacy has made its way into many, many districts all over the nation. And many schools have adopted a structured literacy approach to teaching reading. However, just 10 years ago, the term structured literacy as we know it today did
Mm.
not exist.
Yep.
So let's talk about where this terminology came from and what it refers to.
Yeah, so the term structured literacy was created by the International Dyslexia Association in July of 2014. So, structured literacy is a term that was coined by the Orton Gillingham Institute and is defined as a highly explicit and systemic teaching approach
Mhm.
based on the science of reading. So, many people think of the science of reading as the skills and instructional methods that have been proven effective in teaching reading. Decoding is a key component of literacy, but the science of reading is the body of research that demonstrates the importance of explicitly teaching this skill. And we know explicitly teaching is the key. So we'll explain that and get a little bit more into that later. But we do have this amazing article that we'd love to dig a little bit deeper into. And here is a really interesting quote from the article that I wanted to highlight that
Mhm.
focuses on why early literacy development is important. So this is right from the article, which we will link in our show notes, but here's the quote. Failure to learn early reading skills leads to lower reading comprehension later in elementary school, which can then lead to poverty, underemployment, and increased likelihood of being incarcerated. So
Mm.
that is a
Mhm.
significant quote. I mean, when you think about these little children that are starting kindergarten, we need to support them so that they're not behind the eight ball before they
Mhm.
even start. And we put them in a position where we're just continuing cycles of poverty because they don't have the skills necessary to learn.
Yes, and I've watched this as a teacher and a
Mhm.
former reading specialist. I was trained to do a program called Reading Recovery, and in that program, we worked with children in first grade to ensure that they learned how to read because learning to read is crucial. If you aren't understanding how to read and use the letters in the books, it's really hard to pay attention to comprehending what the story is trying to tell you.
Yeah.
So I can see why that quote is so meaningful.
Mhm.
And there's so much research to support the necessity of developing all reading skills, including comprehension. Learning to read proficiently by third grade is a critical predictor of high school graduation, with non-proficient readers being 4 times more likely to drop out than their peers. Studies show 16% of students not reading proficiently in third grade fail to graduate. So this is something not to take lightly.
Yeah. Yeah. Once they're behind, they really never catch up, right? Like
Yeah.
statistically speaking, it's very, very difficult for children to catch up
Mhm.
when they start school behind.
So true. So if you're wondering out there what you can focus on with our early learners, there are 5 pillars of reading instruction, including phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. So each component plays a crucial role in learning to read, and I just want to touch upon each of them. Phonemic awareness is the ability to identify, manipulate, and distinguish between individual sounds or those little phonemes in spoken words. So, for example, the word bat, you would think about bat and you would say b-at. But if you change the b in bat to you make the word mat. So
Mhm.
this focus is purely on sounds. And when you're talking about phonemic awareness, when you're riding in the car with your children, you can play little games. You can play rhyming games even, where you manipulate the sounds in words.
Such a great idea. We love rhyming games.
I know. Phonics refers to the relationship between letters and sounds in written text. It
Okay.
involves understanding how letters represent sounds and using that knowledge to decode written words during reading and encoding during writing. So it focuses on the ability to look at the letters B-A-T and know the corresponding sounds to decode the word. Phonemic awareness is purely auditory or oral, whereas phonics requires text. And we did talk about this in an earlier podcast, but we just want to reiterate it. So, with phonics, you do need to play little games when you're reading an early reader with your young children.
Mhm. I love how I think in a previous podcast we discussed it as a difference between like what words you can do in the dark, like
Yes.
yes, we could do like when we're doing phonics, we need to actually see it,
Yes.
but you could talk like the phonological awareness, is that it? That you could do in the dark, where you could do it as like a bedtime story and
Mm.
start working on those words with your child.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then as you're reading books, you as a mom, you're reading fluently to your children. And
Mhm.
this refers to the ability to read text accurately, quickly, and with proper expression. It's really automaticity and recognizing words, and then you're able to comprehend. And you really encounter this more at school age when you're learning to read, but it is something that is often discussed. You need to read with fluency.
And Crystal, when children that don't know how to read yet
Uh-huh.
read a book back to the parent that
Yeah.
they somewhat memorized,
Yes.
and they're showing that understanding of the fluency, is that, would you say that's like a precursor to reading, or
I
how do
do. Yeah. And I also think
you?
they're repeating the story. So yeah, it is a precursor to fluency, but it's also showing their understanding of concepts of print, which
Oh,
is crucial.
yes.
Yeah. And vocabulary is the fourth pillar, which refers to the words students must know to communicate effectively through reading and writing. It includes the meaning of words and how they are used in different contexts. So I always tell parents it's really important to address vocabulary early on. Don't be afraid to use those big words. Kids love the big words and they like to throw them out there once they understand what they mean.
So true.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, think about Pinkalicious. I mean, kids love that book and
Yes.
it's a just silly word, but they catch on so quickly.
Yes. Love that.
Yeah. Comprehension is the ability to understand and make meaning from what has been read. So, if students have that background knowledge from previous reading, if they're able to pull vocabulary to help with understanding, if they're developing those decoding skills, that is much more out there today because of structured literacy. And if they know and use vocabulary, they're able to make meaning from the text, which is amazing. And this starts earlier with young readers. When you read a story, you can actually discuss the meaning of the story.
Yes. So I love how you're breaking this down for parents, for our listeners, of all the components of literacy. It's a lot, right? It's
It
a
is.
lot for young children to learn, and it kind of really makes you realize why we need to start reading to children so early. I
Mm,
mean, people read to babies before they're even born. And I know I have board books in the NICU next to every single bed, and parents often say, "Why is this here?" Because it's
yeah.
surprising that they would read to a baby so young before their understanding. But when you think about how we are providing them the foundation for their own vocabulary, sometimes before they're even born, because they're starting to
Mhm.
hear that pause and flow of a conversation. And studies
Mhm.
show they start to understand that as early as 3 weeks. That when
Mm,
that pause and flow, and when someone stops speaking, that's someone else's cue to start speaking. So, um, we're teaching these skills at a really, really early age. And and I love when parents read to their unborn baby. And people
mhm.
often ask me, like, how early can babies hear in utero, or can they hear in utero? Did you know babies can actually hear at 18 weeks gestation? And that is before their outer ears are even formed. So
Oh,
their inner ears form first, so they can literally hear in utero before they even have ears. Isn't that amazing?
oh,
That
all the more reason to read the baby in your belly.
Yes. And they're hearing mommy's heartbeat and their own heartbeat amplified through the amniotic fluid. So really, that's the first rhythm that they're hearing, which is early math. And, I mean, they're learning
Mhm.
before they're even
Mhm.
born, which I just think is amazing.
That is.
But I love how you've broken this all down. And, the science of reading really makes me think, as an occupational therapist who's worked in EI and worked in school settings, we really combine that with the science of writing. Research has shown that they're very closely linked, because when you think about the science of writing, sort of through an OT perspective of, we would want to ensure that children are able to have a functional pencil grasp and be able to write letters appropriately. We want to look at their composition and the transcription, the ability to understand some vocabulary and grammar, but then also to be able to hold a writing implement and be able to write some letters. So,
Mm.
even at
Mhm.
an early age. So, um,
Mhm.
the writing piece is such an important piece of literacy too. And
It
neuro,
is.
yeah,
And when I'm thinking about writing, I'm thinking, young children do scribbles, and that's their first attempt at writing, and that's
yep,
amazing. But even as they're scribbling, they're holding a thought in their head and they're
yes,
putting it on paper.
yes.
And that's comprehension.
Yes, and the neuroscience shows that that's their, that the composition and the transcription
Hmm.
are combined, in
Yes.
So, so having that thought in their head and putting something on paper is a really higher level skill that children are learning. And I love too to think about sort of all the concept skills that are required for writing and reading. Like I can remember when I first started teaching in the school system, I can remember one particular little girl I worked with who was in first grade and really, really challenged with her handwriting and being able to write letters. And, the teacher asked me to take a look
Mm.
at her. And the thing that struck me the most, I thought, well, let's start with a very basic, let's start with a straight line letter. And I thought, let me see if she can write the letter T. And I asked her to write a T and she didn't know how to. So I told her to put her pencil at the top of the paper and she didn't know where the top of the paper was. And it
Mm.
just really made me think about when we don't give children vocabulary like directionality words through play, how that really affects their ability to write and read later on when they don't
Mm.
have those basic
Mm.
foundational skills of where's the top of the paper? And when we say draw a line down, what's down? What direction is that? What does that mean? Or, draw a line across. What is across? So building
Mm.
in
Yeah.
and children learn these vocabulary words through reading and play, and parents narrating their play, like, oh, I see you're driving your car across the floor. Now you're going down. Not, like just by narrating what children are doing and being involved in their play, they're going to learn these foundational words that are going to help them with
Yeah.
their future literacy. So there's
And
so much
that's all so good. And it really makes me think ahead. In several episodes ahead, we're going to talk about writing and handwriting because in Pennsylvania, we just passed a new law where we have to teach handwriting again,
Mhm.
which is wonderful.
It is wonderful
Yeah.
because it's not being taught. I mean, we've stopped teaching cursive for one,
Yes.
and I think there's just the assumption that children are writing all day, so you don't
Hmm.
really need to stop and teach the letter formation. But
Mm.
that's a really
Yeah.
important part is
Yeah.
teaching them how to write letters, and teaching them a proper pencil grasp and how to write the letters and how the letters should be formed. And then there's all the perceptual issues, things that can come in too, like the spacing between the letters and the
Mm.
spacing between the words and the size of letters and reversals. And it could
Hmm.
be so
There's so
incredibly
much to discuss.
complex.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, back to our structured literacy, let's continue a little bit more along there. And I think it's really important to note that structured literacy connects to early literacy by providing an explicit, systemic, and cumulative framework that teaches the foundational components of reading, including the phonological awareness, sound symbol association, syllables, morphology, syntax, and semantics, ensuring that students build automatically in decoding and spelling. So, decoding, that ability to look at a series of letters and know what word that is, and to start understanding, some spelling concepts. So this study that we're looking at here today is an empirical study that's conducted by Duker and colleagues in 2025, and they discovered that structured literacy had larger positive effects on student literacy outcomes than balanced literacy programs. So, just to explain the difference, balanced literacy programs include immersion in literature, but with less systemic instruction in phonics. And
Hmm.
structured literacy recognizes that students learn best when they are engaged and active in the learning process, which I love. I love bringing in sensory motor components, hands on movement activities through learning. So, this really combines listening, speaking, reading, and writing, which in turn develops the student's language comprehension skills. Explicit phonics instruction and controlled decodable text were the key instructional features that contributed to its overall effectiveness. So,
Hmm.
really great study.
Yeah, and that really nicely summarizes what we've been talking about for the last several minutes. And I know a lot of people have been hearing structured literacy and science of reading mentioned in the same sentence.
Mhm.
And we know the science of reading includes 50 years about of interdisciplinary research, including cognitive psychology, neurology, and linguistics. Gee whiz. That explain how children read and write.
Mhm.
And so you nailed it. This emphasis on explicit and systemic instruction in phonics, phonemic awareness, and vocabulary that was sort of missing with that balanced literacy approach.
Right.
And so now the pendulum has swung and we are really nailing phonics and manipulation of it.
Yeah.
So, when we think about the science of reading, there's several key areas. One being the five pillars of literacy, which we discussed earlier, brain research and evidence-based instructional practices, Scarborough's reading rope, which is those of you who love literacy have heard of Scarborough, but this is something I studied years and years ago. It's really old. But this rope shows that reading comprehension requires both decoding skills and language. And so it's really important as you're learning to read. Decoding is not the only skill. You also need to comprehend what you're reading. So for this reason, we have a nice manuscript that kind of delves into this.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this manuscript. It's titled The Effect of an Instructional Program in Foundational Reading Skills on Early Literacy Development of Students in Kindergarten and First Grade. And like I said, we will post this in our show notes. But just to
Mhm.
summarize this study, it investigates the impact of a literacy program focused on foundational reading skills on kindergarten and first grade students' early literacy development. So the authors used a design where outcomes for students receiving this instruction were compared with those receiving typical literacy instruction.
Mm.
And results showed that in the instructional program, that they demonstrated significantly greater gains in phonemic awareness and word reading skills, with larger effects observed when the program was implemented with high fidelity, like,
Mhm.
regularly,
Mhm.
often with good parameters. So these findings support the effectiveness of this explicit, systemic, phonics-based instruction in improving early literacy outcomes.
Mm. And it's what's happening in schools today as school districts are purchasing programs.
Mhm.
They're implementing them with fidelity. So daily, and they're really following a manual where it tells them explicitly what to do and the steps needed. So the program we're reviewing today is out of the University of Florida Literacy Institute.
Okay,
Just
some
one
other
program.
Yes. So, some other key points. The study evaluated whether a structured, evidence-based early reading instructional program called UFLI Foundations improves early literacy in kindergarten and first grade students compared with typical reading instruction.
Mm.
So, the program was designed to develop this phonemic awareness, decoding and encoding skills, and proficiency in reading to connected text.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think too, I think it said researchers used quasi-experimental design that compared students who received a full school year of
Hmm.
the UFLI Foundation's instruction to a matched group of students who received standard classroom literacy instruction.
And that's
And
great because we need a comparison. We can't just look at one group receiving the instruction and say, oh, look, they're great. You have to really compare it.
right, so they had sort of their control group that we could go back and compare the two different
Hmm.
ones and see what were the different outcomes. Um, so students who were taught with the UFLI Foundations program showed substantially greater gains in early literacy skills than students receiving the typical instruction. So it was a
Mm.
statistically significant change, meaning that there was more than one standard deviation of improvement in those early reading measures,
Mm.
which is what we
Hmm.
want to see in research. That is some good
Yeah.
results. Mhm.
It's amazing. And as an outsider looking in, You can definitely say that's dramatic improvement,
Yeah.
meaning that those gains would really equate to additional months of reading instruction relative to usual practice. So just by using that systemic approach and doing it with fidelity, you're going to gain months of
Mhm.
instruction. So that's really important.
Yeah.
And again, the study supports that idea that explicit phonics instruction must include instruction on grapheme and phoneme correspondences and decoding and encoding, and also reading connected to text, which of course is a natural given. So when we're thinking about phonemes, we're thinking about the smallest units. So there are 44 phonemes mapped out to the 26 letters. That's a lot to
Okay.
learn. So
Yeah.
it's no wonder we need this approach.
Yeah.
And graphemes are those letters. It can be one, two, three, or four sounds that represent letters. So
Okay.
it's
I'm
really
so glad
tricky.
you explained that. The
It is
graphene
tricky.
phoneme.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
so. That's good stuff.
Okay, excellent. Also, the study emphasizes the need to implement explicit instruction with fidelity, like we said,
Hmm.
to improve student outcomes. So it has to be done regularly.
Yeah, can't be once a week and
Yeah.
you just won't get the outcome. So it's
Yeah.
important because, in a classroom setting, the days are so busy and
Yeah.
sometimes subject areas have to go because you run out of
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
There's field trips, there's all kinds of things happening, assemblies, but this is one area you just don't want to skip.
Okay, so prioritize this program for that early reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the article also emphasized that phonics instruction supports students' ability to accurately and automatically read words,
Hmm.
which frees up their cognitive resources for comprehension, right? If they're so focused on sounding out words or, trying to remember what letters the word sounds are as they're reading, they're not really comprehending. They're just
Yeah.
struggling through the reading of the words. So the next
Right.
step really is to be able to free up their higher level thinking so they're
Uh-huh.
comprehending what they're reading, right?
Oh, sure. The automaticity needed
Hmm.
to decode and then read is so important. It caused me to want to dig deeper into what this program actually looked like. So I went to the University of Florida's website,
Mhm.
and they have a wonderful toolkit on their website for UFLI foundations. And what happens if you go there, the website provides teachers with detailed but easy to follow lesson plans. And there's an 8-step routine that they implement with fidelity. And in that routine, it addresses phonemic awareness, a visual drill. So you're visually looking at the letters, an auditory drill, so important, a blending drill. So you're blending a new concept idea, word work, irregular words, which also are important, and connected text, because you really want to have that text that's connected to some of the sounds that you're trying to learn. And so, that connected text is something I feel like we overlooked in the days of what we call guided reading, where we used to teach reading to children and we would say, look at the picture.
Mhm.
And what is that picture telling us? Now, what's the sentence say underneath it? Well, it's really impossible to do that if you don't have the phonics background.
Right.
So that's why the structured literacy is so huge. And so the website goes into nice detail in how to assist with explicit instruction. So overall, hopefully all of you listening right now can take something away from this, whether it be practicing phonemic awareness in the car and doing some rhyming activities, or it's lap reading and you're discussing the story that you're reading, or it's bedtime reading and you're playing Find a Word, or as Amy mentioned, if you're reading to your baby in utero just to develop those early language skills, it's all good stuff.
Yeah, love it. So those are some great tips for children before they even get to kindergarten. because this is a lot, right? This is a lot to for children to have to learn in kindergarten and first grade.
It is.
So the more we could do to prepare these children before they get there by giving them some of these skills, like you
Mhm.
said, reading to them, making them aware of words in their environment. What are the words you see on your cereal box? What are the words you see in signs as you're out driving around? And start pointing out letters and sounds and giving your child some awareness of that, along with those early concept formation words that you
Mhm.
could integrate through play. We're giving children a great foundation before they start school.
So, so true.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Okay,
Have a
have a
great
great
day.
week.